This weekend, we learned that Ole Miss and their playoff road is actually crystal clear, but don't focus on how scary Georgia is. Focus on the Oklahoma Sooners.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we break down the Ole Miss playoff picture, which is starting to look crystal clear. With 4 games left where the Rebels should be favored in all of them and only one looming matchup against a powerhouse that just dismantled Texas on the road to this postseason is wide open. Every SEC team could end up with 2 or more losses, meaning Ole Miss can absolutely run the table this year. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. After the Kentucky game, our focus must shift to Oklahoma, and the Rebels are in a prime position to make a run. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and every day who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, this weekend, the playoff picture got really in focus, and the main takeaway that Ole Miss fans should have right now is that if Ole Miss wins the rest of their games this season, the last 5 games, they should be a playoff team. That should be good enough to get them in the playoff, especially with how good Georgia looked. So anybody that's worried about the ham-ringing a week ago and all of that, and just handling the fan business of being up and down and riding the roller coaster, know that everything is still in play for Ole Miss to accomplish their goal. Now, the margin for error is gone. Completely gone. It's amazing how different this season would look with just a win over Kentucky. If you have a win over Kentucky and an overtime loss to LSU, you're probably still sitting at 6th or 7th, and you're getting ready to make a run in the playoff and getting ready, focusing on that Georgia game. But that Kentucky game is the albatross around your neck. You were about an 18-point favorite in that game, and you caused that. You weren't able to win it, essentially. And I get angry thinking about that, but it is what it is. But this Oklahoma game coming up this weekend has similarities to that game. Okay. You need to pay attention to what is going to happen this weekend, because there are similarities between the Kentucky game and the Oklahoma game. Both of these teams have absolutely abhorrent offenses, Kentucky and Oklahoma. Both of these teams are going to come in and try and play as slow as possible, at least if they have a half a brain, they will. It looked like during the Oklahoma-South Carolina game, they tried to use tempo a little bit, so that's interesting. But odds are they're going to try and play pretty slow. Oklahoma has a really good defense like Kentucky. Kentucky's defense is wearing down because of how bad the offense is. Oklahoma's defense is probably pretty close to doing the same thing. They've given up 34 and 35 points over the last 2 ball games. But this ball game against South Carolina, I think not everybody should be misled about what happened in that football game. Oklahoma, if you remove the first 3 possessions, I know you can't do that, but where Michael Hawkins just had a horrible matchup, an absolutely disaster matchup, to where South Carolina scored 21 points within the first 6 minutes of the ball game. There was one point of the game where South Carolina had 5 offensive plays and 21 points. So if you take that away, South Carolina won the game 14-9. The rest of the game was a 14-9 game. Granted, we all saw the South Carolina offense. They're not good. But 14-9, that's a respectable game to where they just kind of let it get away from them. So know that Oklahoma has the ability to stymie the Ole Miss offense. Their defense is pretty good. Offensively, the matchup is going to be Ole Miss's defensive line against Oklahoma's offensive line. Oklahoma's offensive line is famously not SEC ready. They're just not. Ole Miss's defensive line might be the best unit in the entire country. Those guys are going to be the key to this game. Ole Miss just needs a W in this game. Everybody's going to talk about style points and all of that. No, Ole Miss just needs a W the rest of their games. Just win the ball games. I don't care if you have to play joyless murder ball on offense and let the defense win every single game that you have. I don't care if you want to score 60 points and give up 55 in a game. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is a simple letter, W. Ole Miss needs the win. Ole Miss has to get the win to handle what is going to happen. My take today is simple. The playoff road for Ole Miss is clear, but really scary now that Georgia looks like Georgia. I mean, there's no margin for error. The Kentucky game is just a complete black mark on the schedule of Ole Miss right now. And with Georgia being what Georgia is, you have to win that game. The only option is winning out, and that includes beating the Georgia Bulldogs. So the margin for error is gone because of what you did. And what Georgia looked like against Texas, that's scary. We've all seen that. We all feel that. We were in Athens a year ago when Georgia put it all together, and whenever they get rolling, it is scary. And they have top 100 players all over the field. So that margin of error because of the Kentucky game is gone. The LSU game, there's no fault to losing that LSU game. There's honestly not. The fault lies in that Kentucky game. And if you look at the final 5 games on the schedule, these are how I ranked them going into last week. With number 1 being the Arkansas Razorbacks, number 2, Georgia Bulldogs, number 3, Florida Gators, number 4, Oklahoma Sooners, number 5, Mississippi State Bulldogs. And I am not changing that. I think that Arkansas being the place that it sits on the schedule, the location of the game, how Ole Miss performs in that stadium, and all of that makes Arkansas a much tougher game than Georgia. Now, if Ole Miss beats Arkansas, you have to deal with the most talented team in all of college football. So I'm not saying that Georgia's easy. I'm saying that that Arkansas game is going to be a real test, and they're going to be ready to go. And Florida's, don't look now. Billy Napier and the Florida Gators are starting to put it together a little bit. And against Kentucky, they put up 48 points. So if they get going a little bit, first of all, the Lane Kiffin to Florida rumors are going to die on the vine, thank goodness. But Florida could sneak into a bowl game, honestly, this year. With DJ Lagway as a quarterback, all of that is good for Billy Napier. And then we have Oklahoma Sooners and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Oklahoma has a really good defense. Mississippi State has a pretty good offense, even though it's a true freshman quarterback. And Jackson Arnold being the head of that Oklahoma offense is at least interesting. Their whole problem's on the offensive line. Should be interesting. But the playoff road's clear. You know exactly what you need to do. Just win out. It doesn't matter how many. It doesn't matter what's going on. If Ole Miss can win out, they're going to make the playoffs. Now, they're going to be traveling somewhere. Your dream of hosting a playoff game is gone because of that Kentucky game. But everything is still on the table for you to accomplish your goal. You can still win a national championship. And it's great that in this era of 12-team playoffs, and everybody's been worrying about it and the teeth gnashing about it, Ole Miss is still, even with 2 losses, talking about a potential national championship. Legitimately. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win it. I'm saying they can still have that goal. The season is not over. Ole Miss needs to win the game against Oklahoma, whether by 1 or 100 points. I don't care. They need to figure out a way to win in Fayetteville, which they have not been able to do since 2008. Since Houston Nutt, Ole Miss has not been able to win in Fayetteville. Like I said, I saw Ole Miss give up a touchdown on a kickoff return in Fayetteville. So, is what it is. And then you have the road game to the Florida Gators that has a chance to be a little bit weird, but Florida's about to start that gauntlet that everybody looked at before the season where they play Texas and Georgia and Ole Miss and all those guys and LSU. So we will see exactly how it lands. Now, before we change the subject a little bit, I had 4 conversations last week about how everybody can't criticize the players on this team. And I don't agree with that at all. I'm not willing to do a disservice to the players by not holding them to a high standard, if that makes sense. Now, I don't go in on players, I'm not somebody that's going to completely tear them down or anything like that. But I am going to say whenever something's not happening that should be happening, you're getting paid money right now. And with that comes responsibility. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I think we've all heard that. So my advice to the fan base, honestly, would be don't lower your standards because of any particular way it might be handled. Make them bend to your will instead of you bending to their will. And you're going to have a much higher standard and a much higher rate of play and a much higher return than the vice versa if you let the players drop everything down. That's just my thought on that as well. Locked On Ole Miss is going bigger and more mainstream in the Oxford community, and it just feels oh so right. Catch the latest as we dive deeper into what the Locked On Ole Miss scene is going to be and connect like never before. Let's face it, nobody likes waking up feeling sluggish after a night out. That's where Z-Biotics pre-alcoholic biotic drink comes in. The world's first genetically engineered probiotic designed by PhD scientists to tackle those rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that makes you feel terrible the next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme that helps you break that byproduct down so you wake up feeling refreshed. So just make sure Z-Biotics is your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and enjoy your tomorrow. So I first gave Z-Biotics a try during a weekend get-together with friends. I drank it before my first whiskey sour, and honestly, I was pretty blown away. The next morning, I was able to go for a run and knock out my to-do list without any issue. It is the real deal. So get ready to feel your best after a night out. Head on over to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at checkout to get 15% off your first order. The best part, Z-Biotics is backed by a 100% money back guarantee. If you're not satisfied, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. That's zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off and enjoy your tomorrow. A new partner of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is College Corner. It's your one-stop shop for all things Ole Miss. Game day is just around the corner, and this week I think the fans are rocking powder against the Oklahoma Sooners, and it's the Realtree game. You can see what I am wearing. Scott is getting tons of these products in this pattern, so head on over to the College Corner right now to pick up your perfect game day gear. Whether you're gearing up for football, basketball, or baseball, College Corner has you covered. They're located off of Sisk Avenue, right across from the new Chick-fil-A, and getting there is a breeze with plenty of parking. And for those of you out of state, no worries. Visit collegecornerstore.com where they turn around orders lightning fast. Trust me, this isn't a pitch. College Corner is where I get all of my Rebel gear. So visit collegecornerstore.com or stop by the College Corner in Sisk Avenue in Oxford, Flowood, or Ridgeland today. So this is a really cool announcement that we need to make. And the Locked On Ole Miss podcast has absolutely astronomically grown over the last, 2 years. To the point we have over 11,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're getting videos that are out drawing the season whenever Ole Miss loses a game. The Locked On Ole Miss podcast is just going into areas that it hasn't been going before. So the natural progression for Ole Miss would be taking it a little bit more mainstream. And what I mean by that is nothing is going to change for the content of the show. Nothing's going to change on where you watch the show. We're just going to add to it. And this is what we're doing. So right now, the logical next step is to get to the point where the traditional media avenues as it becomes mainstream. So we are going to move over and look at ABC 24 out of Memphis. They're going to partner with us. They've already put up our videos. Right now it is moving in. It's a little bit out of order at the moment, but they are kind of getting it right. You can watch it. They have a 24/7 news stream that the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is going to be a part of. They have all of the videos that Locked On Ole Miss puts out, and I am going to be helping them with their streaming show that they have called 24 Floor Sports, which airs today, I think at 3:00 Central. It's going to release. I'm going to be the voice of Ole Miss on there as well. So all over the Memphis community, you are going to see me, for better or worse. So Locked On and the Locked On Ole Miss podcast channel has been growing on the YouTube side of the house pretty greatly over the last couple of months, which this is the biggest season that Ole Miss football has had in years, so it makes sense. But where we're starting to grow are on these ancillary avenues outside of the YouTube stream, outside of the podcast stream, the live streams that you can get online in these Roku apps like News Now and Zine. Those things, those streams were really starting to grow. And the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, because of how great it looks, has a role on all of those channels. This 24 Plus app is that app. If you want to look at how you exactly can get the program, look in the bottom. It's available on Roku, Fire TV, Android, iOS on the phone, and Apple TV as well. It's the 24 Plus app. You can see it right there in the middle of the screen, right underneath the loom. Download that, and you can see all of the content that is available on the 24 Plus app. I know that's not a big deal. I'm just letting other people know how to do it. Those streaming avenues are probably responsible for 3,000 streams per week for the Locked On Ole Miss podcast between Zine and News Now and stuff like that. So this is a very big deal for the outreach of the program. It's going to put Ole Miss in front of a different audience, Locked On Ole Miss in front of a different audience than it has been. Ole Miss is going to have more of a community role inside of Oxford on linear television, because the newscast at ABC 24 is going to promote the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Whenever they do a story about Ole Miss, they're going to do something like, hey, for more information, tune into the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. It's going to put Locked On Ole Miss in front of more people on the channel that is the home of the Southeastern Conference. It's absolutely massive. And like I said, check all of their stuff out on the 24 Plus app. And the 24th Floor Sports channel is supposed to drop, I guess, at 3:00 Central Time today. And that is the show that I'm going to have a role on. And they're going to have me in to preview the Ole Miss Oklahoma game, supposedly that game, the Ole Miss Arkansas game. I am going to be the person that kind of breaks down that type of stuff. So I'm very excited to do that. This is absolutely massive stuff. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast becoming more mainstream. This is the next logical step in the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. And we'll see exactly where it goes. I mean, we're probably going to get in the ballpark of 12 or 13,000 subscribers by the end of this year on YouTube. Our podcast list is going to go up as well. I do want to thank everybody. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching this program, because it is really, really great. And now we're just going to expand out and do some really big time things. And that is all because of you. Thank you so much for that. It's a wild year in the SEC. There's no undefeated teams remaining heading into Week 9. We break down the latest lines and what to expect in this unpredictable season. Stay tuned. Game Time is your place to get your Ole Miss tickets. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. There's not a bad seat in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, but Game Time has it to where you can see exactly what the view will be from that seat before you buy the ticket. They have lowest price guarantee, event cancellation, job loss protection. They take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might even be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So it's going to be really interesting. Week 9 lines for Ole Miss. Ole Miss right now is an 18.5-point favorite over the Oklahoma Sooners. Currently on FanDuel, the over-under is sitting currently at 47.5 points. That tells you how good both of these teams' defense are at the moment and how little they expect Oklahoma to participate in the scoring. I think they view this game to look a little bit similarly to what the South Carolina-Oklahoma game was, where they got beat 35-9. That would have been an under. That's only 44 points. So that gives you an idea of exactly how that goes. The other games this weekend, like I said, Ole Miss is an 18.5-point favorite. That is a big game, a massive game. The Kentucky beat Ole Miss as an 18-point underdog. So Ole Miss needs to be careful. They need to be ready to go. They need to be up for this game. Arkansas is favored by 8.5 points at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a good little offensive team right now. They are not a good little defensive team, but we all knew that would happen. Arkansas did not look good against LSU. I don't know. This could be a game that Mississippi State can get. Now, if Arkansas is good and everything's working, Arkansas is going to win the game because Mississippi State can't stop Arkansas. Bobby Petrino will cook. All of that stuff will happen. They'll win the game. But if they let Mississippi State hang around, Mississippi State's going to make plays in one of these games to get a win. And I think a year ago, didn't Mississippi State beat Arkansas like 7-3 or something like that in Fayetteville? So this game does have the ability to get weird, and usually the home team wins it, but Mississippi State was able to win a year ago. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Alabama is favored by 13.5 points over Missouri in Alabama. I don't know if Alabama deserves to be 13.5 points favored over anybody at the moment. Ray Perkins has his team. I'm just kidding. Kalen Bohr has his team scuffling at the moment. They're having problems at the quarterback position. They're explosive plays or bust. If you can shut down Ryan Williams and you play deeper than the deepest, you are going to at least give Alabama a really big game. All of the teams have done a good job of eliminating explosive plays since the second half of the Georgia game. So Alabama is not really where they need to be. One more loss. They have 2 losses on the season. One more loss with other losses available potentially. This could be an 8-4 Alabama team. And Missouri lucked out. They did. They lucked out against Auburn and won the game. I don't know how good Missouri is, but I know that Alabama is not that good at the moment. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Texas is a 19.5-point favorite over Vanderbilt in Vanderbilt. I don't know about that game. Vandy was able to beat Ball State looking ahead to this game. I was a little bit nervous about that one, kind of a Georgia State feel to it. Vandy's 2 plays away from being undefeated at the moment. Texas is going to take a gut punch after that Georgia game. Vandy is going to do things a little bit differently. They're going to slow it down, way, way down, and it's going to frustrate that Texas team. We'll see how they're able to handle whatever's going on. But Vandy and Diego Pavia, I mean, it's scary playing Vanderbilt right now. And by the way, I will say this. I think Vandy is the only SEC team that has a winning record against the Texas Longhorns. Vandy is 7-3-1 against them. No other SEC team has a winning record against the Longhorns, I don't believe. So we'll see exactly how that goes. LSU is an underdog. Texas A&M is a 3.5-point favorite in that game. One of these 2 teams are going to be the next team to get a second loss this season. Whether it's LSU or A&M, we'll see. I think that, honestly, A&M probably needs to beat LSU. A&M needs to win that game, and then Texas kind of takes care of them, something like that, to get their second loss on both accounts. I think that's the way that's falling. A&M's only in 3.5-point favorite. It's basically a coin flip. It's basically a pick 'em at this point, and that's basically home field is what that is. It's 2 evenly matched teams. we'll see. Texas A&M spent last week, played Mississippi State, but they were looking ahead to this game. This game was going to be absolutely massive. And finally, Auburn is at Kentucky, and Kentucky needs to win this game. Kentucky's a 3.5-point favorite in this game. Kentucky needs to win this game. If just for Ole Miss's playoff resume, they cannot be the dead last team in the conference. They can't. If you want to have a playoff run, if you want to make the playoffs, Kentucky needs to beat somebody. Kentucky needs to get out of their own way. And I'm telling you that loss to Kentucky in September for Ole Miss is an albatross. It is. It was arrogant play calling, all of that stuff. Kentucky kept the ball for 45 minutes. They did all this stuff, and Ole Miss played directly into their hands, and they won the game. They made a couple of fluke plays and won the game. And that was the only way that Kentucky could win that game. But Ole Miss lost it, and it's in ink. It's dry. Whenever everybody looks at the playoff resume, it's going to be, lost to Kentucky at home. That albatross is there. Kentucky needs to start winning some games. Ole Miss needs Kentucky to be better than they are. And it starts by beating Auburn, who right now, Hugh Freeze, has a worse record than Brian Harsin did on the game before Brian Harsin got fired. Brian Harsin, I think, finished 9-12. Hugh Freeze right now is 8-12. That was his time at Auburn. If Kentucky can win this game, it's going to get so weird on the Plains and Auburn this year. Just so weird. Anyway, thanks everybody. And go check out the 24 Plus app and the abc24.com/watch. I think local Memphis.com/watch. It's available as there as well. But that is the home of the SEC on linear television. And also the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is going to be playing there, and they're going to have the whole catalog available to anybody that wants to watch them. I am very excited about what that can be, and it's absolutely massive. It's big time. It's taking this podcast from being a very good, very high listened to niche podcast to being much more mainstream. And, everybody tries to make it mainstream. If you can make it mainstream, you're going to be all right. So we'll see exactly how it goes, but I'm very fired up at the moment as well. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast. And now you're being able to catch it in many different ways as well. So it's different audiences. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in all of college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Exciting news. Also, you can become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It is our texting program that sends you notifications on everything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial. Experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description. For those of you watching on YouTube, we'll send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.